Hey Internet, Daryl here in the Victory 4x4 garage, just finishing up the install of our strike bumper for the 5th gen Toyota 4Runner. This thing looks fantastic. You can get it like this or with tube work on it, holds a winch, really awesome, and it's not that hard to install. You do have to do some trimming of the factory plastic bumper cover. I know that scares a lot of people, so before this video I checked, and this part is available as a crash replacement for like 200 bucks. Like if you got in an accident and a body shop had to buy it, you can buy this plastic in black for 200 bucks plus a little more to paint it. So if you screw this up horribly, it's not the end of the world. If you want to go back to stock, not the end of the world. I don't know why you want to go back to stock, but you know, that's on you. Anyways, I'm going to install this Factory 55 while you go back and learn how to install this. The first thing we have to do is we have to mark this factory bumper cover for cutting. And I know that looks kind of crazy, but it's really simple. It's only a few measurements. What I like to do first is lay down some masking tape kind of in the area where I have to mark. Then we can make our lines on this masking tape. Then we can use a different color tape to string between those lines. So this bumper is actually already cut for our Blitz bumper, but all you have to know about that is if you look right here, we're about 1/4 of an inch down from this edge. So you're going to measure about 1/4 of an inch down from this edge, and that's going to cut all the way straight across here, and then the rest of this bumper cover is going to come out with these sides. So you can chop it up and cut it out however you want, but the line that matters is just about 1/4 of an inch here, and this is totally covered by the bumper, so that's not super important. You can do really whatever you want. But now we want to mark this side here. It's going to be the same on both sides. But our first mark is going to be right here on this front face. So that mark is going to be, put your tape measure here on this crease, and we're going to come down 9.5 inches. So as you bend this tape measure, it's going to use just a little bit more tape, but it'll be okay. So 9.5 inches is our first mark, and that's going to be right on the corner here. So that's at 9.5. Now in this corner right here, kind of above the light bucket, you're going to want to push your tape into the edge there and push your tape into the edge right there. There's this plastic insert. And the first measurement you're going to want to take is with your tape against that plastic insert, and then that's going to be at 2.5. So I've already got a line there because we laid this out earlier, but 2.5 is that first measurement there. And then we're going to measure up in this corner, right at the corner of that insert. You're going to come down and you're going to do just about 5.5, 5 3/8-ish, just kind of right about there, and you're going to make a cross. So that's going to be the mark we're going to make from here to here. And now we have to make a mark over here on the side. So for that mark, we're going to go from the bottom of the fender, and that's going to be at 1.5. And we've already made that because we've laid this out, but so we are at 1.5 from there to there. So now what we have to do is we have to connect this mark, the edge of this mark, to this cross straight. So this is going to be straight all the way across here. And we have to connect this mark to this mark here straight. And then we're just going to carry it around down to the cut that we made earlier. So you can do this a couple of ways. You can just kind of wing it. And I've got some green thinner tape here, so you can kind of do it by eye just because you're hoping to make it straight. So we can put this tape in the corner up here, and we can give it a little tension and pull down straight to our mark like that. And then we can come on around here and do the same thing where we pull straight to our cut. So that's definitely an option, and for this angle, that's probably going to work just fine. And then the other thing we can do is do it right here, but the problem we run into is you have to keep it straight through this kind of insert here, this inset here. So that can be somewhat difficult, but it's possible. You can just keep laying it out, do it a couple times, keep making sure that it's nice and straight. Or the other thing you can do is get like a cheap laser level. These things are getting super cheap now at home stores or Harbor Freight or Amazon or whatever. And you can laser level between this, and then you can use the tape to lay out that line. So I'll show you how to do that right now. So these levels work two ways. You can unlock them, and then usually there's like a pendulum or whatever you want to call it in there that levels out in 2 planes to gravity. So let's see how close that gets us right now. Usually on this hoist, this truck is not 100% level. So that's pretty close. So what we're going to do now is we're going to lock it, come on, just a smidge. And we're going to lock it out there. Okay, so you can see we're on our edge right there, but we're not on our edge over there. So what we can do for that is we can just lower the tripod with the level locked. And maybe we can do that. There we go. You can make them kind of equal. And then we can kind of fuss around with this height once we do that to get this where we want it. That's perfect right there. So now you'll see that we have a nice sharp red line all the way across there. And we can either just cut on that line, or since we're going to stand in front of it with the cutter, we'll just take our tape and we'll just kind of try to stay out of the laser, and we'll just mark that line with our tape all the way across. And then we know that we have it dialed. Okay, now we're going to do the exact same on the other side. Now comes the fun part. Now we get to cut into our trucks, which is always a little nerve-wracking. So there's lots of ways you can cut this. It's just plastic. You could use a Sawzall. You could use like a little body saw. You could use a hacksaw. You could do a chainsaw if you wanted to. I like these little grinders with a cutoff wheel. And the reason I like that is because they're very easy to keep the line straight. You can watch while you're cutting. You're cutting a pretty wide section of the line as you go. I like these a lot, and then I like to go back and finish the line up with a flap wheel on these. So I think this is a really handy tool to have. You can get them lithium ion now, which is awesome, but they're dangerous. So you have to be very careful around these. Wear eye protection, use the guard, and then what happens is if these discs bind, they tend to explode, and then shrapnel goes everywhere. They're spinning very fast, so please be careful while you're using this. So double check your line again, make sure all your measurements are right, make sure everything looks good. And then remember, we're going to cut on the bottom of our tape line. Well, that's where we marked it. If you used your tape to mark the top of the line, you want to cut on the top of the line. Just make sure you know which part of the line you put your tape on. And don't worry, this isn't a super, it doesn't have to be super accurate. It just looks nicer the more accurate it is. And if you screw it up really, really bad, they make this edge trim stuff that goes on there, and no one will ever know. So let's get started. In here it might get tricky. You may have to use a Sawzall or something else in this area, so we'll skip it for right now. Oh, and before you do this, look behind your fender, take your inner fender out if you have to, and make sure there's nothing you're going to cut through. Our 4Runner has nothing that we have to worry about, maybe the fog light buckets, but those are going away anyways. But I don't know about every model of 4Runner. I don't know what crazy stuff they're going to put behind this bumper. Make sure that you check before you cut. So we did, but ours is good. So let's continue here, and then here, then we'll see how we're going to handle this little section right here. On these tight little corners, you can always use a razor blade so you don't have to overlap your cut with the disc. And then in here, kind of that same thing. We'll just cut this now and then we can clean it up. Yeah, it looks like that bracket goes back a little ways, so. You could always pull this whole light bracket before you cut and deal with all that, but you know, we're just going to throw it away anyway, so we really don't care if the bottom part gets destroyed. I am going to finish that little bit off with the Sawzall, or you could hack at it with this blade too. Be gone. Now you can see in a couple sections we're a little shy of this line. I did that on purpose. We can clean some of it off with this, and then we can switch to a flap wheel on this, and we can just perfect those lines before we pull the tape. All right, now I'll switch to this flap disc here. The grit really doesn't matter, but what we want to do is take the edge of the bumper and go across the longest portion of the flap wheel that we can with this flat, and that'll give us the straightest line, and we're just going to clean it up to our edge. Now you can pull the tape and do any final cleanup by hand sanding it with a sanding block, but you shouldn't need a ton. Now we're going to cut this inner fender, and for now we're just going to kind of do it to get everything out of the way. I'm going to leave a lot of room, but later I think what we'll do is cut it so that we can pull it up into this inner fender brace and zip tie it, and that will keep mud and snow and stuff out of this region. But for now we just kind of want it out of the way while we do the bumper install, so we'll just cut it proud, more room than we really need. Good. All right, once you get this whole bumper out of the way, there's some refinements you have to do in this area right here so the bumper can slide in and fit really nice. So we want to leave this bottom lip here because that's going to give some rigidity to this grate, but we also need some clearance. So what you want to do is take a piece of tape and tape right off the corner that you marked before, and tape a nice straight parallel line, parallel with the ground back, and then tape a little line right here. You're going to chop this corner, and then right at this bend right here, tape straight up. So a 90-degree corner right here to cut that out, and then just cut that little lip right there, and that'll leave this bend across the grill just to add some rigidity. We may have to add some zip ties or something underneath here to tighten everything up so it doesn't rattle, but that'll be okay. It'll all be hidden underneath the bumper right there. So you can cut this a lot of ways. I'm going to use just a nice sharp utility knife, and what you want to do is just score along your line there, and you don't have to cut it the whole way every time. Just keep scoring on that line. Careful you don't slip off it and cut the rest of your grill. And then once you get deep enough, you can usually go a little bit deeper. Just like that. You can also use your 4-inch grinder or a Sawzall or whatever you want, but this, I find the utility knife gets a more precise cut in this area. That's all there is to it. Now we need to cut this bottom portion of this plastic bracket away so our bumper can kind of sit nicely up underneath here. Now back behind here there's some metal, like a metal bracket a little ways in. You don't really want to cut through that, you just want to cut through the plastic. So you can use your 4-inch grinder again, you can use a Sawzall. You can actually remove this if you want. You can mark it right now, pull everything apart and cut it on your bench on a bandsaw or whatever. But I'm just going to cut it with this 4-inch grinder, cut all the way through it but not cut to the steel, and then we'll just break it right off. And that little piece of steel that's sticking down underneath there, that's okay. The bumper will kind of wrap around that. All right, once you get that bumper cut, you're going to want to install your winch and your light bar with the bumper on the ground. We've done this a million times on other bumpers, so we're going to cut to that. And past me is going to show you how to bolt a 20-inch light bar and a winch into a bumper. The first thing you're going to want to put in is either a light bar or the aluminum perforated block-off plate that we sell. That's an option for these bumpers. If you're going to install a light bar, you're going to want a 20-inch light bar with a mounting width of right around 22 to 22 and an eighth or so. That's the width between these mounts here, right around 22 inches. We actually sell this light bar. We usually keep it in stock, so if you want to call when you place your order to get it, this bar has a 22-inch mounting width from side to side. If your light bar is a little narrower, you can take that up with some plastic spacers on either side, and maybe you can replace these bolts here for longer bolts if you need to. There's lots of ways to deal with that. Just don't go wider than 22 and an eighth or you're going to have some problems. All right, so the first thing we need to do is just bolt this 20-inch light bar in here, and it's as easy as just sliding it into the tabs, angling it straight ahead, and then tightening it down. All right, next we're going to install our winch. And in this application, we're going to install a Warn VR8S. We really like this series from Warn. We like how compact they are. And what's great about that is we don't have to relocate this solenoid box to mount this in the 4Runner. So let's get this thing mounted. It really helps to have a friend in this instance, but you can do it by yourself. I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, if you're installing this by yourself, you can kind of let the winch sit up against the light bar and then start one of these back bolts. Go ahead and put the bolt that your winch supplier gives you in a socket here. Feed it up through the bottom and then up through the hole in the winch plate, and then kind of pull the winch back over the top of it. Get that bolt started. Grab your second bolt and do the same thing on the back hole. Once you get all 4 mounting bolts loosely installed, go ahead and flip the bumper on its back and tighten down all 4 bolts. It might actually be a good idea to install this winch fair lead before you put the winch in. It's going to give you a little more room to work, but it is possible to do it afterwards if you forget, like I did. So if you don't have a skid that comes up to here like the factory TRD skid, we give you this little filler plate, and it's a lot easier to install now than it will be to install once the bumper is on. So go ahead and tip the bumper forward and install this little Valance skid with the button head bolts we provide for you. All right, so this metal cooler line is the only thing in the way of the solenoid box on our Warn VR. And I don't want to relocate the whole solenoid box just for this line here, so I think we can move it out of the way a little bit. So what I did was I loosened up the brackets here just with a 10mm socket, one bracket on each side. And then I gently grabbed it here and here and bent it back just a little bit on each side. So what we're doing here is trying to get this pipe as close as possible to this little brace here without touching anything in the back behind it so it doesn't rub through, giving us enough room for that solenoid box. If you're not comfortable doing this, there are relocation kits from Warren for the solenoid boxes. You can put it under the hood or something like that, but I don't think that bending this tube is really that invasive. And we're back. So one of the differences between our full width strike bumper and our slim blitz bumper is that our full width bumper accepts fog lights or driving lights, whatever you want to call them. It's made to accept these 3-inch by 3-inch LED cube lights. Lots of manufacturers make these from super kind of cheap to very expensive, whatever you want. They're pretty universal as far as their mounting. Usually they mount with one stud here, and their brackets tend to be movable backwards and forwards, in and out. So you may have to figure out your adjustment on that, but I'm going to show you how they bolt in to this bumper. So we have the slot in our bumper here with lots of adjustability. Basically, all you're going to do is put that bolt through the slot, and then a washer and a lock washer is always nice on the bottom. And then I tend to just leave these loose right now and then align them later. You can also install these after the bumper is on. You don't have to do this step right now, but just to show you how to do it, it's easier on the floor. All right, so now's a good time to find a friend and a floor jack to mount this to your 4Runner. The floor jack kind of helps carry the weight, but this wants to tip. It doesn't really balance well on a floor jack, so that's where the friend comes in. I've clamped it on our trans jack to kind of show you how it goes in. So pretty simple. All we're going to do is slide it into the frame rails here and bolt it up. One thing you want to look out for is we need this plastic grill lip to go underneath the bumper top cap. So you got to kind of deal with that a little bit as you're putting the bumper on. And your winch slots will let you move it forward and backwards a little bit, just in case this winch is too tight up against this bumper. All right, so the bumper mounting plates are slotted to allow you to move this bumper, passenger and driver, to center it on your vehicle. But right now, we're just interested in kind of getting it loosely mounted. So reuse your factory bolts and put like one bolt in per side. Then you can kind of even it out on each side, and then you can tighten those bolts down. Now on the inside of the mounts, there's only one bolt, and it's easiest just to reach right in here on these access holes for that, and you can tighten them from the same access hole. Now once I have all the bolts on loose, like I said before, I'm going to center this bumper from side to side, and then go ahead and torque these down to factory specs. And I don't know that yet, but I'm sure that it will show on the video now. Maybe not, I don't know. It's magic. Now on these inner fenders, there's a bunch of different ways you can deal with it. The way I like to handle it is just go ahead and mark a line or just freehand cut with a utility knife. These will cut really easy to match this sheet metal here, just so the whole inner fender kind of matches that. And then we're just going to drill a couple holes kind of near where there's already holes in the sheet metal. So right here, for instance. That's the dullest drill bit I've ever seen in my entire life. Got it though. Can't even drill through plastic. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and just drill a hole through that so we can use this hole in the sheet metal with a zip tie. and then go ahead and trim that, hide the tail, and then go ahead and just do that all the way around the inner fender here where it meets that, and that should look really good. So on the washer bottle, Toyota unfortunately made it kind of hang here. So right now we just painted ours black. We will have a skid available. Depending on when you're watching this video, it may already be available. Be sure to check the website. So that's it. Make sure those mounting bolts are torqued down. Make sure your winch is tight, and you're done. Thanks so much for becoming part of the Victory 4x4 family. If you have any questions about this product or any of our products, please feel free to reach out to info@victory4x4.com or call us 269-459-8447. Thanks for watching.